John Morgan and Mike Bond for MMA Junkie here inside UFC headquarters. No better way to spend the final night before UFC 229, Khabib Nurmagomedov and Conor McGregor. Mike, we saw the weigh-ins. It started out with this morning with the official weigh-ins. Khabib Nurmagomedov, perhaps surprisingly, he said he'd do it, but he lived up to the promise. The first man on the scale. Meanwhile, Conor McGregor, nearly the last man on the scale. Yeah. What did you take out of seeing those two men this morning? Did we learn anything about it?
Well, I guess for Khabib, I said the same thing when we talked yesterday. A man of his word all this week. He said he was going to leave the press conference when he, if he felt slighted by Conor. He said he was going to do his stuff. I'm going to be there at 9 a.m. You will see me. He was the first person to walk out. So again, he's following up, showing that he, is doing what he's going to say. So it makes you think. He says he's going to smash Conor. Is that what's going to happen? We get to that in a bit. But he looked good. I mean, nothing you can really say. Of course, a little drained, but not horrible by any means. I think if we're comparing anyone, Conor maybe looked worse. I looked back at his weigh-in photos from when he fought Eddie Alvarez, UFC 205. He looked much healthier going into that fight compared to this one. And I think it's because, as we mentioned earlier in the week too, he looked really more filled out. Still, when he fought UFC 205, he was, doing the stuff coming down from 170. He had fought 145. It was like a lot of body flux, but it seems like he's been right around this weight class. He fought Floyd Mayweather at 153. Now he's back at 155, and I think for him, he looked a little more sucked out, but still, by the time ceremonials came around, he looked fine.
Yeah, both guys healthy this morning. Fortunately, we got out of there pretty drama-free, which was fantastic. And then, as you mentioned, we got to the ceremonials. T-Mobile Arena, the site of Saturday night's pay-per-view, was the host for the weigh-ins, and it was a fantastic show. We've been talking all week about, does this have that big fight feel? Does this feel like the biggest fight in UFC history? And it certainly did once we stepped inside that arena. The Irish fans were there. I'm sure there were a couple Russians supporting Khabib Nurmagomedov as well, but we saw the tricolor out there for the Irish, no doubt about it. They were singing, they were chanting, and it was quite the scene. Talk about the emotion and the feeling that you felt in there.
I've seen a lot of crazy wins. I've covered enough Conor McGregor fights to be able to compare. This was by far the craziest win I've seen, just because of the whole atmosphere. It was just building and building. We saw Derek Lewis and Alexander Volkov almost get into it. Some tension on the earlier wins as well, and it just culminated with Khabib and Conor. Conor throwing that front kick at him, some pushing, some shoving, a lot of talking, and then it spilled over to afterwards as well. There was fights in the crowd. There was couples fighting. There was the cops wrestling with Irishmen outside. It's just absolutely madness. So yeah, that was one of the overall most chaotic weigh-ins I've seen. Even the Mayweather fight, there was more people there, I think, because the entire top balcony of the arena was filled out for that weigh-in too, and it was getting pretty full in there as well. But there was more people at the Mayweather weigh-in, I think, but this one was more rowdy in my opinion. It was mad.
Should point out, by the way, that couples fighting in Las Vegas is nothing new. There's nothing exciting about that.
Tag teams, though. It was a man and a woman against another man and a woman.
Well, that's
it was mad.
Let me ask you what you read into that, though. We did see the clash between them, but if you watch it carefully, it's really all Conor McGregor initiated, and I don't think Khabib really reacted much. So does that mean, we were worried, did Conor get in Khabib's head? Is Khabib in Conor's head? Have things flipped the script? What happened there?
It's interesting. You know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of the Ronda Rousey Holly Holm win a little bit. We came in, it's like, Conor, we've seen him get riled up, but it also reminded me of the first Nate Diaz fight as well, where and we saw what happened in that one, his only UFC loss, and it's just like the person that you maybe think would be a little more composed is the person that ends up getting more flustered, and then Khabib, similar to, Holly Holm in that win, just kind of stood there, took it all, maybe, waved him on, said, bring it, said his piece, but he wasn't fazed at all. He just seemed ready to go. He probably anticipated, prepared himself for something like that. But yeah, it adds even more interest in this. It's more compelling. Another thing for us to analyze, digest, and look at over these next few hours until we see them in the octagon together on Saturday.
No doubt about it. It's fantastic. Well, all the pre-fight stuff is done. All that's left to do is for those two to step into the cage. It happens Saturday night at T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, UFC 229. And just like we have all week, MMA Junkie will be here in Las Vegas to have you covered for everything you need.